Welcome back to Goldfield Stories of Western Australia. My name is Jim, and today we're pulling back the curtain on a part of Kalgoorlie's history that's often overshadowed by tales of gold, grit, and glory. Because amid the dust, the digging, and the dreams of fortune, people also wanted books, theatre, and a good game of billiards. This is the story of the Mechanics Institute and the Tivoli Theatre, two cultural cornerstones that gave the Goldfields much more than just gold fever. Let's wind the clock back to 1894. An unassuming iron structure was erected on Hannon Street. It was called the Miners' Institute, and inside it offered a quiet refuge from the noise and chaos of the diggings. There were newspapers, magazines, books, and perhaps more importantly, the chance to sit down, exhale, and learn. Just 1 year later, that modest building was replaced by a sturdier timber version. But the vision didn't stop there. By 1902, thanks to community fundraising and growing civic pride, a handsome two-story brick building stood proudly on the site. In 1904, the Miners' Institute was incorporated and changed its name to the Mechanics Institute. Now, for those unfamiliar with the term, Mechanics Institutes weren't just libraries. They were born from a movement to provide working-class people with access to intellectual recreation and self-improvement. They were also seen as an opportunity to keep working men away from public drinking places. These were places to learn about science, government, literature, and art, without the stuffiness of elite institutions. And Kalgoorlie's Institute embraced this wholeheartedly. Of course, the Institute took great care in selecting reading materials. The committee met regularly to review what was borrowed and what the public was requesting. Among the most popular, the American Commonwealth, Mill's representative government, and the development of English thought. Some serious reading indeed. The ground floor and basement were occupied by shops and offices, a practical way to generate income for the Institute, but it was upstairs where the real magic happened. Here, the public library offered a quiet refuge with its well-stocked reading and magazine room. A ladies' lounge provided women with a welcoming space to gather and relax, away from the rougher edges of town. There was a smoking room for gentlemen, a games room for friendly competition, and a covered balcony furnished with comfortable seating. The perfect spot to enjoy a breeze and a book above the bustle of Hannon Street. And at the rear, a grand hall that would host some of Kalgoorlie's most memorable evenings. In 1896, the town held its first major ball there to celebrate the arrival of the railway from Perth. It was an event to remember: music, dancing, and the feeling that Kalgoorlie was becoming an important economic and cultural centre. Travelling time from Perth to Kalgoorlie now only took hours, not weeks. This change enabled entertainers and travelling troupes to perform at Kalgoorlie. Soon, the hall became the go-to venue for concerts, public meetings, and theatrical productions. Touring companies and local groups staged plays that ranged from the sentimental to the spectacular, including one full-blown dramatization of Ned Kelly's Last Stand, complete with a burning inn, flashing gunfire, and a dramatic ride-for-life sequence. You could practically smell the gunpowder. On 21st November 1899, the Kalgoorlie Orchestral Society performed the first concert in the hall. 31 musicians played, joined by several vocalists. That same year, travelling minstrel shows and the world-famous original Jubilee singers, featuring Madame McAdoo, the only woman tenor in the world, and Miss Susie Anderson, America's Black Melba, also took to the stage. The Institute also hosted sporting events. In June 1900, Mr. Wheatley of the Tattersalls Hotel staged a billiards match between the world champion, John Roberts, and Australia's former champion, Billy Weston. Newfangled picture shows were soon making their way to Kalgoorlie. One of the first was the graphophone, the Yankee novelty invention, which had won top honours at the 1900 Paris exhibition. The audience not only saw images on the screen, but heard steam whistles, galloping horses, barking dogs, and musical performances. This novelty was soon paired with the English Biograph, showing events like the trial of Dreyfus, the funeral of Mrs. Gladstone, and a boxing match between Corbett and Jeffreys. There was even something for the lovers of poetry and satire. On the 1st of August 1900, Dryblower Murphy presented Merrier Moods, a vocal and terpsichorean bouquet. of dances, songs, duets, and trios. Around Christmas, Dr. Charles Clarke captivated a full house with his one-man recital of Dickens' A Christmas Carol, which London's Daily Telegraph hailed as the most marvellous dramatic effort witnessed on stage or platform. In the same hall, Donald MacDonald, the famed war correspondent, brought vivid tales of the Boer War to life for a spellbound audience. But the Institute had its firebrand moments too. One particularly wild night came when a controversial former priest named Mr. Slattery came to deliver an anti-Catholic lecture. A large crowd of angry Catholic supporters stormed the Institute. Police, led by Warden Finnerty and Inspector McKenna, tried to hold them back but were overwhelmed. The mob broke through the rear doors, only to discover that Slattery had already fled. In frustration, they destroyed the stage furniture and sang patriotic Irish songs for a couple of hours before dispersing. By 1904, concerns about fire safety and the high cost of meeting new regulations forced the Institute to stop hosting public events. But that didn't end the building's usefulness. It was repurposed as a billiard hall, complete with beautifully crafted alcock tables, and remained a social centre for decades. Sadly, the library itself eventually closed in 1983, bringing to an end nearly 90 years of literary and cultural service to the people of Kalgoorlie. But for those who remember it, and for those of us who dig through its stories, it remains a proud reminder of what Goldfields' life was really about. While the Mechanics' Institute stood proudly for learning and civil improvement, just a short stroll away was another cornerstone of Kalgoorlie's early cultural life, the Tivoli Gardens Theatre. The Tivoli was a place of delight, drama, and open-air entertainment. First conceived in 1897 by Mr. Phil Stewart, an experienced theatre manager from the eastern states. He envisioned a venue modelled on the high-class continental concert gardens of Europe, a sophisticated retreat of music and theatre for the booming town of Kalgoorlie. Approved by the town council in early February of that year, construction began almost immediately on a quarter-acre block on Dugan Street, between Wilson and Cassidy Streets. Stewart's design was ambitious, a wide, open-air performance space surrounded by high corrugated iron walls and crowned with a grand sailcloth roof. Inside, the theatre's floor sloped naturally toward the stage, and the stage itself was slightly inclined. This clever design ensured every person, no matter where they were seated, had an unobstructed view. The stage was an impressive 24 feet wide and 25 feet deep, with a lofty ceiling of the same height. Dressing rooms for ladies and gentlemen sat on either side, and behind the stage was a long, clear passage running the width of the structure. A space deliberately designed to accommodate vehicles, horses, and even military units, should the performance require such flair. Along the inside walls of the theatre were six-tiered galleries or balconies on each side, capable of seating up to 300 people. They added structural strength to the building and gave patrons panoramic views of the stage. Between the galleries was a wide promenade area. A section in front of the stage was picket fenced off for privacy and considered ideal for the ladies. At the corners near the entrance were refreshment bars where obliging waiters and waitresses served drinks and tea. One side housed a lounge and a tea room set aside for the ladies. For additional privacy, bead curtains hung at the front of the lounges. The theatre was originally lit by kerosene lamps, but these were soon replaced by arc lamps when electricity reached that part of town. The stage itself was vibrantly painted by Mr. Walkley, a local artist from Kalgoorlie. The Tivoli opened its doors to a packed crowd on July 10th, 1897. The debut performance was a local affair, showcasing Kalgoorlie's own singers and musicians. Despite the wintry chill, enthusiasm was high. On colder nights, patrons would gather around bonfires set in the center of the space, a practical and atmospheric touch. Within weeks, the Tivoli became Kalgoorlie's go-to venue for entertainment. It hosted everything from pantomimes to opera, contortionists to boxing matches. Later that year, the Tivoli was renamed Her Majesty's Theatre, part of a wave of patriotic fervour as local volunteers prepared to fight in the Boer War. Under new management, the theatre was significantly upgraded. It received a proper corrugated iron roof, new scenery, expanded stage space, and a full electric lighting system. Even the floor was improved, though modestly, with only filter cloth in the early days. Theatregoers could now enjoy year-round performances, and when summer nights turned stifling, the sliding roof was pulled back to let in the desert breeze. Her Majesties welcomed touring opera companies, dramatic troupes, and international stars. It was even set to host the world-famous soprano, Dame Nellie Melba, in January 1903. Though to the heartbreak of many, she cancelled at the last minute. She believed travelling in the heat from Perth to Kalgoorlie would be too much to bear. Still, the show went on. Maggie Moore, Australia's own theatrical legend, stepped onto the stage soon after, thrilling audiences with her performances in The Widow, From Japan, Struck Oil, and more. World-renowned violinist Ernest Toy and his splendid concert party also performed shortly after. From stirring concerts to championship boxing matches, the theatre played host to all. But, by 1908, the grand halls of the newly built Kalgoorlie and Boulder town halls began to take centre stage, quite literally. They offered modern facilities, larger seating, and drew away the crowds. Her Majesty's Theatre slowly dimmed its lights and eventually closed its doors, leaving behind memories of song, drama, and Goldfields glamour. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Goldfields Stories of Western Australia. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, don't forget to follow the podcast, leave a review, and share it with anyone who loves a good yarn from our pioneering past. Until next time, keep the stories alive.